Show. News, gossip, celebrity interviews with limited knowledge and accuracy in sports and politics. And now, your host, celebrity publicist, Domenick Nati.
That's right, it's Friday, and it is time for the Domenick Nati Show on Intellectual Radio in Chicago and iHeartRadio. Well, we got another good one for you today. A little bit change of pace this week because today's guest is former head of the Republican National Convention, Michael Steele. I understand. You guys might not know who Michael Steele is. I wanted to do a political show because voting went on yesterday, and it's been a big electoral season, and I wanted to do the politics. So Michael Steele was head of the Republican National Convention a few years ago. He is also living in D.C. and is also African-American. So it's a little bit different because he speaks out a lot for African-Americans and Republicans, right? So that is a little background of Michael Steele. Michael Steele, I asked him about a lot of politicians, Republican and Democrat, today, and he doesn't seem to like anybody, to be honest. So I really liked speaking with Michael. He has said he had a really good time speaking with me, and I think that's how the politics go. They're very opinionated in political media and also in the political arena, but I had a lot of fun. I asked him some entertainment questions. I asked him questions about Donald Trump. It was really interesting conversation, and we had a lot of fun. And I've also emailed with him a little bit back and forth since this interview. It's been fun. I really like speaking with him, and I think you will like to hear about it. So keep it here, and we'll be right back with Michael Steele right after this drop from Bill Cosby.
5, 4, 3, 2, go.
This is Bill Cosby, and you're
not. No, you're not Bill Cosby.
Oh, you're Bill Cosby.
Yes, I am.
And this is the best radio show.
Good for you.
What?
No, what do you want?
You say you're Bill Cosby, because that in your voice to prove that you've actually been on the show.
Why would they not believe that I was on the show after you played a tape of me?
I guess
help me out.
Other radio shows do this, and we're trying to compete with them by getting a big name.
Well, you have that. You have Bill Cosby, and I am a big name.
Anyway, Bill's a big fan of the show.
Yes, I am.
Right. He's listening.
You know why? So far, this is the only program I've listened to. Just the one with me on it.
Yes, that's the only one.
That's why it's my favorite.
So if Bill's listening, you should be too.
And my name is Bill Cosby, and I approve this message.
This is the Domenick Nati Show on iHeartRadio and Intellectual Radio. Are looking for a creative and effective way to market your product or services? Are you an entertainer or recording artist looking for a captive audience to display your talent to? The Domenick Nati Show is now offering on-air commercial advertising for as low as $50. Your product or talent will be presented by celebrity publicist Domenick Nati and be seen on our social media accounts and on iHeartRadio and select stations throughout the country. Send us a message on social media at Dom Nati Show or email DomenickNatiShow@gmail.com for more information. The Domenick Nati Show, maximum exposure, minimum censorship. You're listening to the Domenick Nati Show on iHeartRadio and Intellectual Radio.
Okay, welcome back to the Domenick Nati Show
spent too much time on the golf course during his first 7.5 months as president.
You know, I don't care if he's on the golf course or on the U.S.
about our special guest,
the bottom line,
and the time has come
in the job. I don't begrudge anybody taking a break. As long as you're
great. How are you
doing? Your core competencies on a day in and day out basis. That is not necessarily what we have here on a consistent basis from the president. He's all over the map on pretty much every issue. and that's largely because the president comes to these things from an emotional perspective, not a policy perspective. He's agnostic on things related to policy. He's largely agnostic on things related to politics. And so for him, if it works in the Twitterverse and he can tweet about it, that if you read the tweets, they tend to be much more emotional expressions, followed by all caps and exclamation points and all of this. Well, that's not how you do foreign policy, public policy, domestic policy, any policy. For me, the distraction is not the golf course. It's the thing that the president loves to do the most, more than golfing, and that's tweeting. And that for me has been and will remain a weakness for this administration, because it doesn't matter who's the chief of staff or who is filling whatever cabinet secretary position. As long as the president feels that he wants to express his immediate, most visceral response to something in a tweet, without the counsel of his chief of staff, without the counsel of his secretary of state or his secretary of health and human services or his secretary of fill in the blank, you're going to have this sort of hodgepodge, in and out, emotional roller coaster type of, response to the administration, not just here at home, but across the globe.
In your opinion, is Donald Trump the most narcissistic president during your lifetime?
Every president has probably a higher degree of narcissism than most others, most others of his contemporaries. But Donald Trump is the one who expresses it more publicly than others have. So he is unabashed in letting you know what he thinks of himself. And so from that standpoint, the answer would be clearly yes, because we are now much more aware of it, and we see it much more from him than we saw from a Reagan or a Carter or Lyndon Johnson would probably be the next closest, maybe Richard Nixon, where they were more outwardly expressive of their degrees of narcissism. But Trump sort of takes the cake on that front, and I don't think there'll be another like him for a while.
Is it safe to say that you voted for Trump, and did you have any other options?
No, I did not. No, the Access Hollywood tapes was my last straw. Up to that point, I was largely neutral. I was, helping on the transition, such as it was at the time, and trying to be helpful to candidate Trump throughout the campaign, and spent a lot of times, a good fair amount of times, talking to him on and off various sets, Morning Joe or Meet the Press or something like that, and have a high regard for him personally, because I know the man in my association and working with him in the past. But the guy who ran for president was in large measure not the guy I'd come to know, so that was a little bit disappointing, a lot disappointing actually, and of course the Access Hollywood tape revelation was struck home personally in a number of ways. And it was not something I could countenance. Certainly would not countenance in a president.
So did you vote Republican?
I did. No, I absolutely did. There was no way in hell I was voting for Hillary.
Right. Okay.
And again, that's nothing against her personally. It's just philosophically. I mean, I got to be true to myself. I can't sit there and go, well, this guy's so bad, but I'm going to vote for someone who I think is worse. Not for personal reasons, but for policy reasons. For me, it was not even close in terms of the two. They were both very tough candidates to vote for either way. So for me, it was neither one would get my vote.
Melania has visited the Hurricane Harvey victims twice, both times criticized for wearing stiletto heels and not coming more casual. Do you think this criticism of her is valid?
No, because I thought she changed out of those shoes once she got on the ground, because I saw her in tennis shoes. But what do I know?
Okay.
I don't think the first lady is going to walk through sort of a torrential, after a torrential event like that and figures, let's go see the sights in stilettos.
What is your stance on Trump ending the DACA program?
I'm sick and tired of Republicans talking about immigrants and whatever their status is as if they are just numbers or statistics or somehow a threat to our livelihood and lifestyle. And get a grip and recognize that instead of keeping their heads up their behinds on an immigration, now that they have the House, the Senate, and the White House, they are forced to deal with this. President called them on it, and I appreciate him doing that. He put it in their quote, "You got 6 months to solve this, figure it out." And it's not something that the House or Senate leadership wants to deal with, but now they have to, and they should. And Democrats shouldn't sit back in the cut thinking, "Oh yeah, we'll watch the Republicans squirm on this. This will land on their plate just as easily and just as well." They are equally responsible because for 8 years, all they did was deport 1 million people a year. They didn't come to the table with anything any more comprehensive than DACA. And that was done to an executive order. And given when they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, again, there was no movement on immigration. So there's a pox on both these houses, Republican and Democrat, in terms of not effectively addressing the status of immigrants in this country. And so, I say to my Republican colleagues and friends, so are you prepared to go have that conversation with an immigrant family who's here illegally, but during that time had a child who was born here and is now a U.S. citizen? And you're going to tell them, you're either going to tell that kid, that 15 or 14-year-old kid who's a U.S. citizen, that they now have to go back to a country that they have no tie to, and live there until they're 18, and then, oh wow, you get the brass ring because you'll have dual citizenship. Really? it's such an asinine, ass-backward conversation to even think about having. And you're not going to split up these families. You're going to have to deal with them. So I think in the end, the solution is going to be a very straightforward, less complicated one, and that is they will all be grandfathered. And the DACA program will go away. And but those 800,000 or so souls who are here will get to stay, because it will be a political and economic nightmare to unwind what has already been done.
Do you believe that Donald Trump is racist, and do you think he considers the African-American community a priority?
I don't think he considers the African-American community a priority, but tell me which president did.
Right.
Okay,
well,
so let's start with that.
Like Obama did anything?
Oh,
like
really?
This?
Yeah, he virtually gutted HBCUs across the country. Yeah, that was yeah, okay. So again, tell me which president in which African Americans were, quote, a priority. Remember, Obama played down his ties to the black community. He didn't use that as a battle cry to move forward on a number of pressing issues. And by the end of his term, even the first term, the amount of grumbling and noise making in the black community was beginning to rise to the point where you had some fairly notable African American political thought leaders and others who came under fire for beginning to publicly criticize the president's lack of interest, seemingly, in the black community. So, to sort of heap something on Donald Trump that, applies to every other president, to me is not fair. So in terms of whether he's a racist or not, my dealings with him, that is not an impression or an expression that I would ever walk away with. I think he caters to, I think he has catered to some racist elements and tendencies in the country for political gain and purpose, just like Richard Nixon did in the 1960s with this whole Southern strategy crap. Again, I think we have bigger and broader questions to deal with on issues of race than whether or not one president is or isn't. The fact of the matter is, beyond the president, black folks have to deal with bankers, they have to deal with mortgage companies, they have to deal with developers, they have to deal with business owners, they have to deal with schools, they have to deal with all kinds of institutions and systems, the least of which, including the police forces in their community, that are obstacles for their settlement of the American dream. So, I think there's a lot more in unpacking that question than just putting it all at the foot of one person.
Do you believe that Donald Trump has a real chance of being impeached?
No. You tell me how that gets the Republican House and Senate. How he gets charged in the House and convicted in the Senate.
Yeah,
it's not happening. It's a Democratic pipe dream, and they lavish in themselves with that every night in hopeful optimism that it happens. But the fact of the matter is, no.
A Democratic pipe dream. That's a great soundbite.
Yeah. It's just not. Unless there is something there's an earth-shattering bombshell of criminality or violations of constitutional responsibilities and duties by the president that rises to the level of impeachment. I just don't see it happening. And there's been nothing that's been evidenced so far that rises to that. I just don't see that at this point, So, that's my little caveat at this point, because we don't know what the findings of the special counsel are so far.
How do you feel about Colin Kaepernick and the NFL players not standing during the national anthem?
Look, that's an expression of your First Amendment right to protest, if you want to call it that, or to make known how you feel about issues. And so, look, NFL owners, I think, it's made it very clear how they feel about it. And he's not on a team. So I think they've made their point of view very clear.
Do you think he's being blackballed by the NFL?
Of course he is. Is he playing on a team? I mean, look at the quarterback situation of certain teams and ask yourself, why isn't Kaepernick quarterbacking that team? I mean, they much rather take a rookie and put him in than to take a fourth-year, Super Bowl quarterback.
Michael Steele, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, it is absolutely my pleasure, Domenick. I enjoyed it. And if you run across Beyonce, just slip her a little note saying, I know a guy.
You're not going to win this, but I know a guy who would have
all he wants is a coffee. And then she'll call security. I thought, you can help a brother out.
I will.
Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Hi, everybody. It's Gene Simmons. Of course, you're listening to Domenick Nati's show, but what else is new?
This is the Domenick Nati Show on iHeartRadio and Intellectual Radio. Do you have a business and are looking for a creative and effective way to market your product or services? Are you an entertainer or recording artist looking for a captive audience to display your talent to? The Domenick Nati Show is now offering on-air commercial advertising for as low as $50. Your product or talent will be presented by celebrity publicist Domenick Nati and be seen on our social media accounts and on iHeartRadio and select stations throughout the country. Send us a message on social media at Dom Nati Show or email DomenickNatiShow@gmail.com for more information. The Domenick Nati Show, maximum exposure, minimum censorship. Listening to the Domenick Nati Show on iHeartRadio and Intellectual Radio.
And we're back. Domenick Nati Show, Intellectual Radio, iHeartRadio. That was our exclusive interview with Michael Steele, head of the Republican National Convention. Yes. What did you guys think? I don't do too great with the politics, but I think I did all right this time. I really enjoyed having you on the show, Mr. Steele. Great speaking with you. Great conversation. And guess what? As of right now, next week's guest is supposed to be Whoopi Goldberg. I know! We're back in entertainment next week. We tried the politics for voting season, and next week is going to be a big show. We're working out the details right now. We're trying to fix and make our schedules unite. So as of right now, me and Whoopi Goldberg's teams are trying to coordinate a time for us to do the interview. So keep it here, and I will see you next Friday on the Domenick Nati Show. We'll see you next week.